Chris, thanks so much for being on the show tonight.
Sure, appreciate it.
Little one-on-one segment here. Now, it's funny, you're obviously involved with a ton of communications, a ton of that, but it all started around, I think, sports reporting, right?
Right. Yeah, another lifetime I was a sports reporter. I got started when I was 15. I was a sports reporter for an old radio station that was #1 in the city, KIKK. It was a country western. And I was a full-time sports reporter with a 401k, medical, and dental before I had a driver's license.
There you go.
I covered the Oilers back when Earl was here, Love You Blue Days, all that good stuff during high school. And it was a great time, great fun. Astros were good there. The Rockets made it to the NBA Finals against Larry Bird, and so it was a good time.
Now, and then you stayed here and went to University of Houston, right? Were you a communications major?
Yeah, I was communications and poli-sci major at University of Houston, and did some sports reporting on the side, and had a couple marketing companies when I was in college, and chased women and bartended and all that kind of good stuff.
Typical college career,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Now, a lot of Texans fans would love to know that you were a big influential part of Mr. McNair's campaign to get a team here, correct?
Yeah, it was fun. When I left sports reporting in '96, I started doing project work and then started my business at that time. And one of the very first projects I had, and one of the first things, I migrated from sports reporting, and this city, like many other cities at that time, within that 10-year period, we were ground zero on what are we going to do with stadiums. You know, the Astros were saying they're going to leave, the Rockets were going to leave, the Oilers were leaving, and so I was able to manage that campaign. We had a stadium referendum. We had the Astros Stadium, and then we had the rodeo and football stadium. We couldn't get a deal with Mr. Alexander. He was pretty tough at the negotiating table, so we bypassed that, and the original stadium referendum was '96. We passed that, and then we did the, then I was working on the state legislative team. We passed the state law, and then they grandfathered in our referendum, and then we started building the baseball stadium immediately. Our plan was we were not going to build the football rodeo until we got a team. And everybody around the country is like, they're nuts, there's no way they can get a team. And I worked with Mr. McNair on that. Actually, we wrote, the Sports Authority was my client. Interesting story. We had about 5 or 6 zillionaires saying, I'm going to be the next owner of the Houston team. I'm your guy.
Who else in Houston wanted the team?
Well, there were a couple other big name, very wealthy people that wanted it. I didn't want to mention any names because I didn't want to step on any toes.
Okay, I didn't know if that was
So, yeah,
that was public at the time.
Yeah, no, not really. But we had that. Sports Authority did. So we wrote a letter to Commissioner Tagliabue at the time and said, who's our guy? And he officially said the NFL designated Houston owner designated is Bob McNair. And then I was able to.
Now, how did that work?
With
how does he become? That just.
It was Tagliabue's call.
Tagliabue's call was like, we're going to only deal with him.
And Jerry Richardson knew him very
Sure.
well, and Mr. McNair had done some. I wasn't saying he was lobbying. He was well regarded,
Sure.
as you well know. It's a fraternity.
Absolutely.
And they said, boom, McNair's our guy. Then we went up against so-called L.A., but it really wasn't us against L.A. You know, I had the analyzation of 18 million eyeballs versus 5.5 million eyeballs. LA wins, but LA's stadium situation's a mess. They got racial politics. They got a liberal state that's not going to give them any money to build. So they had all these problems, and they had all these people popping up saying, I'm going to buy the team, I'm going to buy the team, I'm going to buy the team. We did the math. We knew it would take $2 billion cash for an LA team to appear, and Al Davis was sitting there waiting to sue. So we put our best deal on the table. We presented him McNair. We had our stadium. We did everything. We said, go for it. And Bob flew to do the deal. He was going to give him $500 million. And he called me and Billy Burge on the phone at the Sports Authority chair at the time. He said, I'm going to go get a team. The number was 500. 15 minutes, it was $800 million in a Super Bowl, and he said, do it.
That's unbelievable.
They took him to 500 to 800 million, just like that. And he said, give me a Super Bowl, and they said, done. That's how he got the team.
Now, is that to date still the most complicated, most project with the most moving parts that you've ever done, or have you dealt with other things that are just as wide-ranging, just as tough to deal with?
You know, probably the most. You know, at one point in the baseball stadium, we had 200 vendors at one time doing different works, like a ballet dance. You know, building the stadium, and then building the football stadium. But the big issues, yeah, I mean, you had big, huge money. The rodeo, you had. You know, media, you had NFL. It was a big deal.
People don't realize how much the rodeo played a part in the building that stadium. You couldn't build a stadium in Houston without the rodeo signing
Absolutely
off on it, right?
no way. No way you could do it.
And that was the big crux between Bud Adams and in getting a new stadium was that Bud Adams wouldn't deal with the rodeo people, correct?
Right. He made a political mistake. Instead of going to the rodeo and cutting a deal, he went to Bob Lanier to cut a deal, and Lanier didn't like Adams, and he screwed him in the end. And Adams didn't want to go, and he asked Mike McClure to go and try to get a deal, put it on the table for leverage. McClure came back with such a good deal from Tennessee, he couldn't pass it up. The real story is Bud did not want to leave Houston. Everybody blames Bud. The person to blame is Bob Lanier. He's the one that got rid of the Oilers.
And Bob Lanier,
the former mayor of Houston.
Okay, that's right. Sorry, we're not.
No.
Not all.
And Bud made a mistake. He should have made his political deal with the rodeo.
Now, what other sports do you follow? Obviously, you follow football, basketball. Are you into golf? Are you in what are you?
Yeah, migrating out of a sports reporter, everything's a business. People probably think everything that you do is cool, but the reality is it's a job. You work very hard, and there are some things you love about it, some things you don't. Sports reporting, anything's like that, any business. When I left, I really concentrate and watch. I've got kids' business, all that, but I love to watch the Masters. I love U.S. Open and Wimbledon tennis. I love the Olympics, and I love college football and pro football when the playoffs come around.
Now, there's one more project you want to work on. What is it?
Oh, gee.
I mean, if you got one more deal to do, you help bring the Houston Texans to Houston. What's something out there that you said, what, I'd really love to do that. I really want to be a part of something like that.
That's a great question. I probably would like to be a part of the business aspect of an NFL team. I think it's fascinating. They have done such an amazing job at branding or being a part of a World Cup, the business side of World Cup. It's the biggest event on earth. It's just absolutely amazing. Cultural, aspect of it. It's brilliant.
Is America going to get it again at some point?
Sure, they will, but they're out of the politics of it right now. They weren't even in the mix. They need to get their political pitch down and go after another World Cup. But yes, I mean, they definitely should get a World Cup again.
Absolutely. Chris, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.